Hey guys, it's me, Yami, and I recently had a request for to show how I make videos, generally of the vlog or games or whatever. So I figure I'll show the kind of things I'm normally using. So I have my camera. It's on my tripod. It's a Canon EOS 1100D DSLR camera that I have tethered to my computer like so. So there's my legs. So you see right there, this cable right here is in fact the USB cord. I've got myself a retractable USB cable. If you can see that, I'll actually try and focus on that. So like it's a retractable USB cable. So that's a cute little thing that I have right here. I'm also using I'm also using some Logitech earphones. I'm not entirely sure what what earphones they are, so don't ask me for specifics on that. Yeah. So anyway, to make high quality video, it just basically requires a good webcam. There's some high definition webcams available that will run off the battery of your laptop or computer. But I'm using a DSLR which actually has to run off its own battery. So every so often, if I find myself forgetting to recharge the battery, it will die. So I would definitely recommend using a HD webcam if you want to record some high quality videos. And that's really the hardware that I'm using, like my laptop, my camera. That's basically all I really ever need to record high quality videos. Now, again, I'm using SparkerCam. I've already made a bunch of videos, or like 2 videos, explaining how to use that. Yeah, it's a pretty good program. That's definitely not the right balance. Anyway, so like if I generally use manual settings on my DSLR and on SparkerCam, because it allows me to control how I want the camera to look like a lot. So for example, like first we have, this is the aperture. So the aperture is basically how small or large you want the lens to be, and that essentially means how much light you want to capture. A small aperture means a massive lens. A higher aperture means a smaller lens. Higher aperture also means that there's a larger area of focus. So when you're taking a photo, for example, and you use a small aperture, you might find like one subject in front is really focused, but everything else in the background is blurred. So that can be used for a good effect. I tend to want to make sure that everything's on focus, so I generally go for a higher aperture. It would also be that the amount of light that is captured is reduced, which means you have to bring this up, or set it on bulb. No, don't set it on bulb. I generally like to set it to something that actually makes sense. So like, as you can see, it's not really noticeable with videos, I think. It's way more noticeable with photos. Yeah, so I'll just bring that right back down to the normal, something that's acceptable. ISO speed is basically how how grainy you want the photo to be. I'm already talking about this in photo sense. I'm not entirely sure if this affects video, but as far as I can tell, it shouldn't. I mean, like just like that, doesn't seem to look all that bad per se. But I generally like to keep it at 100, mainly because shutter speed for a fact does not actually factor into this at all. That's what TV stands. That's what TV supposedly stands for. That should be shutter speed. It doesn't really mean anything in terms of video recording. Okay. I don't particularly use depth of field. I normally just turn that off. I think I find it just lags a little bit on my laptop, which is a little bit weird. Exposure composition and metering mode, they don't seem to be used that much. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it's a camera, or maybe it's just like being in the manual settings. White balance is probably the most one of the most important parts, because that basically changes how your how this entire shot looks. So if you put it on auto, it'll change it to something that's like that. But if you want to go for a bit more of an effect, you can choose between all of the other kinds of white balances that you can choose from. Tungsten is for particularly bright yellow light, which is why it will look really blue right now. Tungsten light in general has a very high, very yellowish tint, as opposed to regular light. And yeah, so like, I mean, like, this is normal, and I normally don't really like this white, mainly because it kind of makes me look pale-ish. Whereas if I go daylight, like, at least I have some color. There's a bit of a color cast, I understand, but whatever, I don't care. Color temperature doesn't seem to want to be changed. Picture style, that's for if you want to like take a picture. You want to change your picture style, but otherwise that's not really necessary. The focusing rectangle, you want to turn that off. And for autofocus is really useful. If you put the camera onto autofocus at least, then you can have it focus, and this is probably a better focus than that it was. And as always, and this is going to look really weird, I'm using OBS. Oh crap, I actually had this on me this entire time. So yeah, I was just saying, like, this autofocus, put it on. All of that, that's all the white balance, that's the ISO speed, that's the shutter speed, which is useless, and this is the aperture, which I believe should be a lot more useful. And welcome to OBS, which, you know, it's just OBS, really. One thing that you really need to keep an eye on in terms of video quality is the bitrate. So PS4 outputs video at, I believe, 6,000 kilobits or 6 megabits a second. 6 megabits a second, roughly. You can always tell how well your video is going to look based on if you go into the properties of a video and you go to the details, to see right there the data rate or the bit rate is roughly about 2,800, 2,700 kilobits, or 2.8, 2.9-ish megabits a second. That's particularly good. On Premiere Pro, there's a there's a preset called YouTube HD 720p 20, some sort of bit rate, some sort of frame rate, or 1080p, some sort of frame rate. And according to that preset, it looks like YouTube videos generally like to go at around about 5 megabits a second. I generally like to keep it at about 5 megabits a second, except for if I'm recording a very long video, in which then I really want it to be lower, so that it doesn't take up a lot of space, and therefore doesn't like, you know, doesn't have to take forever to upload, because you really got to think about a lot of things, especially here in Australia, like really bad internet. To put it in perspective, it can take 2 days to upload a several hundred megabyte video if my parents happen to be watching TV at the same time, like they're online TV at the same time. So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Otherwise, really, to make high quality video, all you need to do then, apart from all of this technical stuff, is to just find good content. games, music, TVs, all that stuff is normally good. Always think about what resolution you want to use. I like to keep mine at 720p. Some people like to use 1080p, and that's actually pretty good for YouTube, for general websites. And then you also have to think about what frame rate you want to capture in. Now I have no method of capturing 60 frames a second right now. Not even using this camera and on OBS. Of course, if you want to figure out how to change the frame rate, you just basically go to your video and you just change the frame rate right there. Of course, you have to remember though that changing the frame rate on OBS to 60 frames a second and using a camera that can only record at 30 frames a second, that's meaningless. You'll still end up with a video that's 30 frames a second. No, you'll end up with a video that's 60 frames a second, but what'll happen is every two frames are the same. So it's like the first frame and the second frame are the same, then your third frame and the fourth frame are the same. So in the end, in 60 frames, you have 30 frames that are exactly the same as another 30 frames, and they're right next to each other. So essentially, you're having 30 frames a second. And yeah, really, I don't think there's a lot. It's not too difficult to make high quality videos, I think. Yeah, it's all about just having good equipment and a good understanding of bitrate and frame rate and resolution, and just being able to tweak everything as you see fit. Editing is always a good idea, as always. I generally use Premiere Pro and After Effects if I need to add some special effects to my videos, which I, at this point in time, especially with like just game walkthroughs, they don't really need special effects because they kind of already have their own special effects. Otherwise, that's about it. So really, I can't think of anything else to add to this. Yeah, so until next time, I will see you guys later. I think next time will be my vlog, or the next episode of Shadow of Mordor, whichever one uploads first. Until then, I'll see you guys later.